Friends, this is the first time that our congregation has been the site of a funeral since COVID started 2 years ago. Since that time, not only with COVID, but also the rise of anti-Semitism requires me to say two comments. One, we want to try to keep our masks on, except for an individual by him or herself up here on the bema. Please keep your masks on. And secondly, emergency exits that we should be aware of. There's one on that side, which leads right into the garden, and one in that back corner, which leads to steps leading downstairs. At this time, we want to call on Susan's sister Marilyn to begin the service with Essa Ena.
Shamayim va'aretz, Ezri me'im Adonai, Oseh Shamayim va'aretz. I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from where does my help come? I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from where does my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth.
As that psalm continues, Psalm 121, from where that verse is taken, God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your protection, a guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm and guard your life. God guards your going and coming, now and forever. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with a recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Susan Prissman's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. Psalm 15, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai, mi yagur ba'ohalecha, mi yishkon bahar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek v'dover emet bilvavo. Lo ragal al eshono lo asa l're'ehu ra'a v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo. Nivze beinav nim'as ve'et yirei Adonai yechabed nishba lahara v'lo yamir. Kaspo lo natan beneshech v'shochad anaki lo lakach ose ele lo yimot le'olam. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity, do what is right, speak the truth without deceit, have no slander upon your tongue, do no evil to others, do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere the Lord. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates, accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own, then shall you stand firm forever. From Psalm 103, Kerachem av al banim richam Adonai al yirei av, ki hu yada yitzreinu zachur ki afar anachnu. Enosh kechatzir yamav ketzitz hasadeh ken yatzitz, ki ruach avrabo ve'enenu velo yakirenu od mekomo. V'chesed Adonai me'olam v'yad olam al yirei av v'tzidkato livnei vanim. As a parent has compassion for their children, God has compassion for those who show reverence. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers that we are dust. The days of mortals are like grass. We flourish as the flowers of the field. A wind passes over them and they are no more, and no one can recognize where they grew. But God's compassion is everlasting. God's kindness to children's children, to all the reverent ones, endures age after age, unchanging. And from the last chapter of the book of Proverbs, Eshet chayil mi'imtza v'rachok mipnei michra, batach ba'lev bala v'shala lo yechsar, gemalatu tovelo ra kol yemei chayeha, sheker hachen v'hevel hayofi isha yirat Adonai hiti talal, tenula mipriyadeha v'yahalaluha b'sha'arim ma'aseha. What a precious find is an Eshet chayil, a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond rubies. Her husband puts his confidence in her and lacks no good thing. She is good to him, never bad, all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is clothed with strength and splendor. She looks to the future cheerfully. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She oversees the activities of her household and never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband praises her and says, "Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all." Charm is deceitful and beauty vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hand. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. Several members of the family will be speaking Susan's praises. Her siblings, her nephew, her daughter. So we begin with Linda.
Yeah. I know you're not necessarily supposed to thank people for coming, but it's amazing to see so many of you here today. It's the beginning of the month of Adar 2, the month of Purim. We're supposed to be happy, but right now that is a struggle for our family. As you probably all know, I could spend hours talking about Susan and telling you stories about how we grew up. Susan was my sister and my friend. We were only 18 months apart in age and spent all of our lives together. We took care of each other. First, on a light note, David reminded me to tell the story of Susan and me playing in the kitchen cabinets with the pots and pans. They were the best toys. Susan put an angel food cake pan over her head and took it off. Then it was my turn. I couldn't get the pan off my head. A neighbor had to get me out with his tin snips. It must have been quite a sight. I know I cried, and our mother saved that cake pan for some reason. It was hanging up in the laundry room, and when it came time to move from 1028 Cresthaven, I took it, and it remains in my basement to this day. Also, when Susan and I were toddlers, we had our tonsils out together, and she recovered more quickly than I did, and she brought popsicles for me. Later, I always helped her with her homework, especially reading and math. We had fun times in our shared bedroom. As an adult, she would occasionally bring me small gifts when she saw something she knew I would like. I got a hat for the beach, I got a scarf, I got a grabber tool, and a few other random things. Chet and I named Susan and Elliot as the godparents of our son Martin. She had been close to both our children and our grandchildren, Joanna Martin and Ariel and Ben and Zach. Susan had a long career of teaching nursery school. Her love for children was apparent in every way. She doted on Bonnie. I will miss the nursery school songs that she sang to all of her nieces and nephews to get their attention and to keep situations calm. She was a very caring person right from the start. She spent lots of time on the telephone checking up on our relatives and her friends. That included me. We spent lots of time keeping up with the daily happenings, however mundane. This trait definitely came from our father, who felt the responsibility for everyone's well-being. Much later, Susan developed various illnesses, and Elliot and Bonnie devotedly accompanied her to many doctor's appointments, and she fought to keep herself as healthy as she could. They say that people can hear up until the end. I am personally convinced that Susan knew that we, her sibling group, were going to come to the hospital for goodbyes. It was all planned out. I don't think she wanted that. So she left this world on her own terms in the wee hours of that morning. So here we are. Susan is now with God and fondly ingrained in our memories. May her memory be a blessing. Now we are 7.
Next, we call on Sally.
I'm a little visually challenged, so let's see this. Forever 66. Susan, my sister, I don't know how to lose you. You were a friend, a nurturer, a wife, a mother. Our family tree has broken, a branch has fallen. We have lost sister number 3. A gaping hole now exists between sister number 2 and sister number 4, myself. My protector, my big sister Susan. Growing up, we shared a bedroom. I guess after Linda and Susan did, we shared a bedroom. She nurtured me and protected me. She navigated the outside world and its many impending evils for me, made sure that I would always be safe. She was all that and more to her preschool children, who loved her like another mother. She and her husband Elliot were a match made in heaven, as their marriage was one for the ages. Their daughter Bonnie came along, their miracle child, and the 3 were forever inseparable, a very close family unit. I want them to know that the strength Susan had in life will be with them always. She will stand tall and protect them and nurture them even in death. We lost our matriarch, our patriarch, and now we have lost a sibling. How does life go on with this loss? It does. Susan, I will live now. I was given a second chance. I can honor your life by living and living my best life. When I was in the hospital treading the line of life and death myself, every nurse and doctor who came in my room knew about you. I had a prayer fortress going for you. The clergy who came to pray for me said another entire set of prayers for you. I gained strength and hope, knowing that I needed to live not only for myself, but for you. You who no longer has a chance to exist physically here on this earth. I will live my best life for you, my sister. Forever 66, forever my sister. That's it.
Next, we call on Joyce.
I don't think we've laughed enough yet because we're sad, but there has to be something that we can laugh about at some point. So I don't know how many pages are here, but faked out, it's just this. I still don't even know what we're doing here, but one of my favorite nighttime television shows, the Late Night Show with David Letterman, and I always watched it. Remember when Dave would walk the streets of New York City, and either he or one of his cohorts would pick a random regular person off the street to interview. One day he asked a woman what she did for a living. She answered, "I'm a temporary person." Dave paused, looked at her pensively, and said, "Yes, I guess in a sense we are all temporary people." Just by virtue of chronology, we expect that the older will die before the younger. But all too often, we witness that this is not the case. And with permission from Elliot and Bonnie, here is the story. My sister Susan had chronic health challenges, and she managed them. On that fateful Tuesday, January 25th, she was exposed to smoke from a fire in the apartment building next door to where she and Elliot were visiting Bonnie. As they were evacuating, Susan began to complain that she was having difficulty breathing. And then she passed out. She was in a coma for a few weeks at Holy Cross Germantown, where the second MRI revealed that she had had a stroke, which is why she was not regaining consciousness. She was then moved to George Washington University Hospital, where there's a specialized stroke care unit. While there, she suffered 2 more strokes and a heart attack. Because it was determined that she had sustained devastating brain damage from which she would not recover, notwithstanding the fact that she had not regained consciousness, it was decided that her ventilator would be removed this past Wednesday afternoon. But Susan beat us to it. She died on her own at 5:45 a.m. on Wednesday, and it was determined that smoke inhalation started the downward spiral. She did have some chronic illnesses, but nothing that should have taken her from us so soon. As Sally said, she was 66. When it was evident that Susan's condition was terminal, I never gave up hope. I simply changed my hopes. I hoped that she was not in pain or distress. I hoped that she could hear us and that she knew that we loved her. I hoped that she was at peace and that she was as comfortable as possible under the circumstances. Susan was sensitive and thoughtful, a good sister with a darn good sense of humor, actually. She was helpful, friendly, caring, and generous. When my son Joey was hospitalized for 12 days in 2018 after a terrible car accident, Susan checked in with me every day. One day, she called me and asked me to go down to the front door of the hospital so she could give me something. She and Elliot were waiting in their car, and she handed me an envelope. I went back upstairs and sat by Joey's bed, opened the envelope, and found a note that read, "I feel helpless that I cannot do anything to help Joey. Please take this. I don't know what else to do." She'd enclosed a wad of cash. I don't know what to do with that either, right? I mean, it was like she took everything out of her wallet and just put it in that envelope. It really was touching. She loved Joey so much, and I sent her a note of thanks after Joey made a complete recovery. She was like that. To all of you who knew my father, Irving, you can hear him now. He's going to be really mad that Susan is already there with him and Mommy. I know you can hear him yell, "What are you doing here so soon? What are Elliot and Bonnie going to do without you?" But after a little while, he'll be so happy that she's there with him. Elliot, Bonnie, don't worry. You still have us, good or bad. Sorry. And I'm not talking about our immediate family, because sometimes that might not make you feel better, right? I digress. But, again, as Irving would say, look around the room. And live stream land. All these people you still have. That's one of those Jewish sentences, like you say part of it first. All these people you still have. Okay, diagram that sentence, right? And Susan, your wife and mother, will still be in your hearts and minds, in all of our hearts and minds. We haven't lost her. She's simply relocating. Right now, it feels as if there's a huge hole in our family. I will always have 5 sisters and 2 brothers, whether I like it or not either. 7 of us here, and 1 watching over us. Today, and these past several days, I have been and continue to be very lucky. I'm lucky because I and my wonderful staff, sorry I have to give a plug, at Torchinsky Hebrew Funeral Home, which includes this guy here, get to take care of my sister Susan, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
And David. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming here today to support our family, especially those who couldn't be here in person, who were able to be here by technology. My sister Susan was born on April 13th of 1955, the third child of our parents. She grew up on Nicholson Street in Washington, D.C., and then Crest Haven Drive in the Hillendale area of Silver Spring. In her early years, she was always helpful to my parents. As more children were born into the family, she was a helper to my mother, as long with all of my older sisters, and younger sister, I guess. I understand that my mother could tell when Susan changed my diaper, based on how long my diaper took to fall off.
As she grew older, she was active in USY, United Synagogue Youth, and she served as president of her chapter right here at Shaarei Tefillah. She went to Israel with her USY chapter together with all of the similar chapters in the area. I can only imagine how nervous my parents were sending her to Israel, especially without technology like we have today. Susan graduated from the University of Maryland, earning a degree in speech communication, and shortly thereafter, she married one of her childhood friends, Elliot Prissman. Their marriage took place in this synagogue when it was on Lockwood Drive in Silver Spring, and their marriage went through life connected as one. It was rare to mention Susan's name without also mentioning Elliot. Susan worked at the Credit Bureau and EPA before retiring for the first time in 1981, giving birth to my niece, Bonnie. She was devoted to Elliot and Bonnie and made sure that Bonnie grew up into the woman that she is today. Susan made sure that Bonnie had a Jewish and secular education. Bonnie learned Hebrew and beautifully chants both the Torah and the Megillah. In the next phase of her working career, Susan took a position in 1986 in the preschool at Addis Israel Congregation, Washington, D.C., teaching generations of students until she retired for the second time after 25 years at Addis Israel. My niece Bonnie has followed in her footsteps, where Bonnie was a USY advisor, and she also teaches as well many students in the Montgomery County Public School System. In her later years, Susan developed some medical issues, and it was rare to see Susan without her family. She made sure that she never missed a family gathering, including all of the secular and Jewish holidays. Interestingly enough, Susan had a very special family trait. She thought that she was in charge of the entire family. In fact, I think all of my sisters have that same family trait, thinking they're in charge of the entire family. We're not, we're just secondary. We'll never know why God takes some from this earth, especially taking Susan while she is still so young. But all of us know that he really knows what he's doing. Baruch, Dayan, Emet, blessed be the one true judge.
We want to call on one of her nephews, Gary, at this point.
It's nice to take this off, so I might stay up here for a while. Good afternoon. For those that don't know me or have trouble keeping track, or perhaps you knew me, but over the past few strange years you forgot, I'm Susan's eldest nephew, Gary, and Marilyn and Howard's son, for additional context. Obviously, I've known Susan my whole life, and the idea that we're at her funeral doesn't feel like it could be real. Despite knowing better, I naively navigate life thinking everyone's going to stick around forever, all the people that I love. And this week, we were bluntly re-reminded of the preciousness of life and of its finite nature. And like all of you, I'm sad and wounded. And I keep thinking that if I give Susan a call, she's going to pick up and we can have one of our talks. And it sounds like a lot of you had those talks with her. My relationship with my Aunt Susan has evolved. Oh, I don't use those. I have handkerchief. Thank you. That's right. First, as a little boy, amidst the various Friday night dinner mischief among our cousins, for which I accept no blame, Susan often seemed pretty unhappy with me. And in response, I wasn't often so happy with her either. But as I got older and through the present, we developed a special relationship. Susan was one of my April 12th and April 13th birthday buddies, along with my twin sister Lisa, and of course Bonnie. And she was almost always the first person to call me on my birthday, unless Jay called me at midnight or 1 in the morning or whatever. Actually, Susan called me at midnight too, so. And she called me her favorite Gary. So I apologize to any of the other Garys in the room, but it's me. She expressed interest in my successes, in my troubles, my complaints, and genuine concern whenever anything was wrong with me, no matter how trivial. I spent a good chunk of our phone calls listening to her grumble about things, most notably her own health problems, for which she sometimes used 4-letter words to describe those ailments, and told me she couldn't say those words to my mother, so she said them to me instead. Susan showed her love in a lot of ways that made people feel special. When I was in college at the University of Maryland, I was a bus driver for Shuttle UM. Susan, Elliot, and Bonnie came to ride my bus. They came more than once. And riding the bus and seeing me was the destination. More recently, when my nephew Jacob sold popcorn for a fundraiser, Susan went to the grocery store where he and his buddies were outside to support him and buy his popcorn. She might have been one-upped by Jay, who bought one of everything, but there's a lot of different ways to show support. I suspect that Susan made these kinds of efforts in support of many of you. Susan was dealt a bit of a tough hand, but through it all, she kept a sense of humor, a smile, expressed love and care for her loved ones, and joyed in each new great niece and great nephew as they entered the world in recent years. Susan had an uncommon soft spot for children, as we've already heard. She loved to see photos, videos of them, or even better, do FaceTime with both of my sister's kids. Children made Susan light up and inspired her warmth to come out. She was a special aunt and great aunt. Losing Susan before she got to get old, or truly old, feels unfair and incomprehensible. My takeaway is that the rest of us should remember to actively love the ones we love, even if we don't always like each other. And to my other aunts and uncles, and while I'm mad at anyone else, feel free to call me. I'm happy to have some more phone buddies to fill that void. And I think I'm a decent listener. Also, call Elliot and Bonnie. I think Susan would approve of us getting closer again, even if there's a little bit of yelling. In the meantime, I pray that all of us can find comfort in our memories of my favorite Susan. May she rest in peace.
And finally, we'd like to call on Bonnie.
I am representing the both of us, me and my father. We're going to do the best we can here. Superior, unique, special, amazing, nurturing. These 5 words don't even begin to describe Mom. She was always the one that came when someone was in need. It didn't matter the time, place, or reason. Always putting others before herself, all the way to the end. Let me take you on a trip down memory lane. On April 13th, 1955, Susan came into the world. Born in Washington, D.C., child number 3 came into the Torchinsky home. Soon the home on Nicholson Street was full of extra excitement. On September 6th, 1955, Elliot was born. Who knew that down the road, these two would get to know each other as well as they would? Let me fast forward 5 years. They ended up in the same kindergarten class at LaSalle Elementary. Here at Shari Tefillah, at that time in Riggs Park, they started their friendship as they were in the same Hebrew school class, and both of their families were charter members of the Shul. During her high school career, USY was her life, as Elliot was an AZA. She served as USY chapter president, and it was always a special time in her life as she went on USY Israel pilgrimage during the summer of 1973, Israel's 25th birthday. She attended the University of Maryland, College Park, where she went on to get her BA in speech communication. I guess that's where I got my speaking abilities. Fast forward to 1978, and suddenly, Susan and Elliot became a combination. November 18th, 1979, they got married, and then April 12th, 1981, I came into the world. So many adventures that we took as the 3 Musketeers. Many trips to Atlantic City with Grandma and Zadie, the crazy caravan down I-95 to Kings Dominion, Luray Caverns, New Orleans, Massachusetts, Maine, Las Vegas, Orlando, Nashville, the cruise to Bermuda, New York, Miami, Louisville, Ohio, many trips to Ocean City, Maryland each summer, Chicago, and so many more. It was very important to Mom that we have the opportunity to travel together as our little unit. In fact, I only went to overnight camp at Camp Louise for 2 weeks each summer so that I could be back in order for us to go on our annual beach trip to Ocean City. Growing up here at Shari Tefillah, at that time on Lockwood Drive, was quite the exciting time. Mom and Dad and other family members spent countless hours putting together Purim carnivals in the Needle Auditorium that will never be forgotten by those that attended them. I know that I certainly will not. She also spent countless hours at Shari Tefillah by serving as PTA president and on the school board for many, many years. Shari Tefillah was a huge part of her life. Judaism was a huge part of her life. That was ingrained in me as a young child, then landed me in USY during my high school career and attending USY Israel Pilgrimage Poland Seminar the summer of 1998, Israel's 50th birthday. After having a handful of other full-time opportunities, Mom took on a job that was calling her name from the beginning, preschool teacher. She started working at Gan Hayeled at Adas Israel in September of 1986 in Washington, D.C., as I was beginning kindergarten. This job allowed Mom to be there for me after school and being available to work on homework and such. Let's just say that I was always one of the first to get the books or copies that I needed from the library because I had a way to get there right after school. She retired from the Gan in June 2011. Thank you to the teachers and staff that worked with her for so many years at Adas Israel. I know that many of you watched me grow up as well, and I hope that you won't be strangers, even though Mom is no longer with us in person. I know that she enjoyed talking, working, and getting to know all of you. It is hard to believe that she will no longer be there for when I have a hard day and I just need to cry or to have laughs with, and I want to tell her everything going on. Thankfully, Dad and I have always been a good team, but nothing compared to my parents. No matter where one went, the other followed, whether it was to a doctor's appointment or just to go to the store. In the last few weeks with Mom so sick in the hospital, that didn't change at all. Dad was by her side every day, whether it was us calling at 5 a.m. to check in to see how overnight went, us zooming into the hospital, me FaceTiming Dad, or just him having his term to visit. He was there. I know that she could tell that we were there, trying our best to do everything possible to bring her back to us. Clearly, that wasn't possible, and that brings us to today. Surreal, unbelievable, shocking, aching, nightmare. As we say goodbye to Mom today, this isn't goodbye. This is see you soon. And Mom?
Not too soon, Bonnie.
Yes.
Remember, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy. The skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Whew. You are special, you're the only one like you. There isn't another in the whole wide world who can do the things you do. I will love you always and forever. We love you, and you will be with us always.
Forever and ever, that's the truth. Let's go do it to him. Thank you.
No.
Hey, thank you.
So sorry to see you.
Okay.
We want to thank everyone in the family for those beautiful words and the strength to share them, and the humor as well. We extend our condolences today to Susan's husband Elliot, to her daughter Bonnie, to her 7 siblings Marilyn and Howard, Linda and Chet, Sally, Joyce, David and Laura, Annette and Jay, to her 12 nieces and nephews and their spouses, to her 6 great nieces and great nephews. Our prayers for support and comfort are with you today and in the weeks and months ahead. Tomorrow on this bema and in synagogues around the world, we will be completing the book of Exodus. The final Torah portion of Exodus describes the construction of the desert sanctuary and recounts how God's presence descended on the tabernacle. More than a third of the book of Exodus is devoted to the details associated with the Mishkan, the vessels, the priestly garments, and the donations that people made. Clearly, we're supposed to learn how central and significant that Mishkan, that tabernacle, was in the lives of the people of Israel. It was God's home. It was the place that brought the people together for spiritual fulfillment and for inspiration. It was the people's religious, cultural, and spiritual home. I mention this today because we can't think about Susan Prissman without thinking about this sanctuary, Sharei Tefillah, whether in Riggs Park, White Oak, or here in Olney. As we've been hearing, Susan's parents and her in-laws, may they rest in peace, were among the charter members of this congregation. 71 years ago in Riggs Park in D.C., families came together and founded our synagogue. For those charter members, Sharei Tefillah was their life. They all lived in the neighborhood, they all walked to shul, and they all provided everything the shul needed to thrive. Susan and Elliot, as we heard, grew up across the street from each other. They went to kindergarten together. They were in Hebrew school together all the way through confirmation at the end of 10th grade. They were in USY together when Susan was president of the chapter. In college, finally, they started dating, and they got married 42 years ago. They, like their parents, joined Sharei Tefillah, became actively involved. After Bonnie was born, Susan was on the religious school committee, the PTA, helped run the Purim Carnival for many years. And Susan and the entire family, entire extended family, would attend the monthly Shabbat dinners, taking up at least 3 of the tables. Susan was born into this synagogue. She was married in this synagogue. She lived her entire life in this synagogue. And it is therefore fitting that we bid farewell to her today in this synagogue. We also can't help but think how important family was to her. Though she was the 3rd child with 2 older sisters, little did she know that she would soon have 5 more brothers and sisters to love and help care for. You all know how Susan was always there for you. No matter what you needed, no matter when she was called, Susan would drop everything and be there for the family. Susan, in fact, would call me over the years to make sure I knew what was going on in the family, if someone was sick or, God forbid, in the hospital. She always kept me up to date, and if she told me about an operation or treatment that she herself was about to undergo, she would ask me to pray for her, but not to make it public. She preferred to keep her life private. Nearly 28 years ago, the Prissmans made a trip to Temple Bethel in Lowell, Massachusetts. It was the end of June, and that's where I was the rabbi. I announced that Shabbat in Lowell that it was official that my family and I would be moving to Sharei Tefillah in Silver Spring. Susan and Elliot, of course, were here earlier in June on Lockwood Drive, along with the rest of the family, when I interviewed over Shabbat. But since they were in Massachusetts anyway, they wanted to see me again. So thankfully, I've been blessed by my relationship with Susan and the family, the longest of anybody of the Torchinskys, for just about 28 years. Her devotion to shul and family have been a blessing to all of us. We pray, though her life ended too soon, that her memory will always be a source of blessing and comfort to Elliot, Bonnie, the entire family, and to all of us. According to the rabbis of centuries ago, Moses blessed the people upon concluding the construction of the Mishkan and upon God's presence descending on the sanctuary with Psalm 91. In that psalm, we find this verse, Be'evrato yasech lach v'tachat kenafav techaseh, tzina v'sochera amito. God will shelter you, you will find refuge, for God's fidelity is an encircling shield. So our prayer today is that may you find God's comfort in the days ahead, and may Susan's memory be like that encircling shield for all of you. Tehi nishmata tzarat b'tzura chayim. May Susan's soul be bound in the bond of eternal life. Amen. Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid Adonai ro'i lo echsar bin odeshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchoti nahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'magalei tzedek l'ma'an shemo. Gam ki elech begates al maved lo irara ki ata imadi shiftecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sararai dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yodefuni kol yemei chayai v'shafti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamim. If we know it by heart in English, let's say it out loud together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Before we conclude the service, just a couple of announcements from here. We will proceed to Shaarei Tefillah Cemetery, which is within Mount Lebanon Cemetery in Adelphi, Maryland, for the burial service. There will be a very, very short private Shiva this afternoon until before Shabbat begins. Shiva will resume tomorrow evening again privately because there's not much time after Shabbat is over for Shiva. But Sunday through Wednesday, the family will be here in the gallery, in the Weiner Gallery, from 3 to 8 p.m., Sunday through Wednesday, 3 to 8 p.m., with Minyan here in the sanctuary at about 6 o'clock, 5:50, so the family can be able to say Kaddish with Mincha and Ma'ariv, the afternoon and evening service. We call on Marilyn once again, the oldest sister, and we all rise for the El Male, the memorial prayer.
El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hametzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'mahalot Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia, Mazhirim, Et Nishmat, Simat Sivya Bat Yitzchak Lev Zelda, Shehalcha, Liolama, Began Eden Tehemenuchata, Anab Yala Rachamim, Astireha Beseter Knafecha Liolamim, Utzror Bitzror HaChayim, Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava, V'nomar Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Simat Sivya Bat Yitzchak Leib Vizelda, to the soul of Susan Carol Prissman, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. Amen. I was going to do your job, Joyce. You shouldn't have to do this.
You're fired. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we will now be proceeding to Shaarei Tefillah Cemetery, which is in the grounds of Mount Lebanon Cemetery. Those of you who are able to join us after we bring Susan out, if you would return to your cars as quickly as possible, put on your bright headlights and four-way flashers so you'll be better recognized as part of our funeral procession. We will also give you an orange tag to hang on your rearview mirror, again, so you will be better recognized as part of our funeral procession. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I would like the pallbearers to please come forward, which are Susan's nieces and nephews.
I think they're bringing the casket through there. Right. Oh, okay. One picture does.
Please everybody stay in your places as we escort Susan. Yiftam David, Shamreni El, Yifasiti Ba, Amar Kleibanai Adonai, Ata Kavati Balaleva, Lik Doshim, Asher Haaretz Nema, Adirei Kofepsi Ba. Yerduat Skotam Acher Maharu Balapsik, Yiskei Hemidam, Uvalasad Shmotam Al Svatai. Adonai Menat Felti, Bekosia, Kutoli, Navali Nafnuli Bakiri, Adonai with the
Watch this right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, when we get to the cemetery, if we can just kind of stay.
Relatively new.
Adonai menat chelki v'chosi ata tomich gorali. Chavalim naflu li b'na'imi mafnachalat shafra alai. Avarechet Adonai asher yatzani af leilot yisroni chiliotai. Family can be here around the tent. Everybody else on the other side, behind the family, please. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimini balamot. Lachein samachli bi b'yagel k'modi achas arish kon levetach. Pilot azov, nafshi lish'ol lo titen chasidcha lirot shachat. Shodieni ora chayim sova smachot et panecha, ne'imot bimincha netzach. Al mekomat avo v'shalom. May Susan go unto God in peace. Shir l'ma'alot esa'inai el heharim. May ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shomayim va'aretz. Al yitein lamot raglecha al yanum shomrecha. Hinei lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha ayad yaminecha. Yamam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmacha mikol ra yishmor nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedcha v'uecha me'ata v'ad olam. I turn my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your protection, a guardian at your right hand by day. The sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm and guard your life. Adonai guards your going and coming, now and forever. After the cemetery workers take the device away, then Elliot and Bonnie will go first, and then Susan's siblings after, and the family will participate in placing shovelfuls of earth into the grave to show that just as Susan took care of us in life, so too in death we take care of her. Let Bonnie and Elliot go first, please. Use the back side of the shovel for the first shovel. And then we'll form two lines in just a moment. We'll use the back side of the shovel for the first shovelful to show how difficult it is for us to participate in this ritual. And then if you want to do more, you can turn the shovel around.
Come here.
Joanna, Sarah, come here. Let Marilyn and David. Did you? I can't make it stand up.
I see.
Susan and I had a conversation, and she said to me, you know, my hair kind of looks like yours. And I said, you want to know? And I said,
You do. No,
well, the thing is, I said to her, you know, my hair looks like yours now.
Yeah, I know.
Well, they know who I am.
Other people on this side? We can have a line on this side, Joey.
I am.
I might take another
But I guess
time.
you shouldn't be.
I know. A lot of people.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. Right, I know. I appreciate this. I know, but...
Anybody else on this side?
Was it really? I know you would know because you had it. Wow, okay. I can't wait to see it again, and I know it'll be there forever, so I'm not worried. No, I'm not worried. Believe me, I'm not going to look at it, but I'm just saying, I want to just tell you, I know you do it out of your heart, but I just want to tell you, it means a lot to me.
We're neighbors.
Yeah, I know, I saw that. That's what Joey said. See, look who's next to it.
Joey, I don't know if you remember.
I do remember you.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I know.
How's everyone else doing?
Well, my son took a flight with his kid yesterday to the Bahamas.
Well, we know that Johnny is
to England, which is living now.
why it could be. Just why. I know you. So that's how far away you were from Hawaii. Yep. He made sure he was up at 7 o'clock in the morning to watch it. He said, I got my alarm. He meant that much to him. I'm glad. That is so good too, I have to say.
Folks, there's a line here if you don't want to wait.
Yeah. She enjoyed everybody. As you know, like I said.
Every place is different.
We're going to finish filling in some.
No,
finish the service.
Yeah, no, I didn't work. Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna watch
Folks, Jay, you want to do?
I know you get it.
How far do you have to fill it?
Just till the entire casket is covered.
Oh, I got it. I use that term all the time. So, which sister? Yeah, but I'm saying, who's his parents? Oh my God. So Marilyn's daughter was married to him. Marilyn's the one that sang, right? Get the two old boys mixed up. It's got so many nieces and nephews. Yeah, oh, so you go to him? You like him? You know what? Because the one area looks good. He seems like a very friendly guy. Is that where you go now?
Yes, it is.
The one that's at DC. Yeah, there's no lines going.
I'm not taking any sense. That's how she. I know that. Right. I'm not going to. She was younger. I said I didn't think I was going to finish. Better. Just a little bit. She was also not supposed to mom. Actually, was friendly. Gary. He's over there.
Folks, if we can gather around for the conclusion of the service, please. Gather around for the conclusion of the service. In just a moment, Marilyn is going to lead us in the El Male, the memorial prayer, once again. Just a moment. First, V'yashov ha'afar al ha'aretz k'shehaya v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher natana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May Susan Prissman's soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, O Lord, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. Amen. If we can, we rise for the El Male, the memorial prayer.
El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Ametzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShchina, B'Ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezohar HaRakia Masirim, Et Nishmat Simat Sevia Bat Yitzchak Lev V'Zelda Shehalacha Li'olama B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchata Anna B'Yala Rachamim Az Tireha B'Seter Knafecha Li'olamim Utzoror, Bitzoror HaChaim, Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach B'Shalom, Al Mishkava, V'nomar, Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the soul of Simat Sivia Bat Yitzchak Lev V'Zelda, to the soul of Susan Prissman, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. Amen. Again, before we conclude the service with Mourner's Kaddish, a reminder there's a little bit of Shiva today before Shabbos begins. More tomorrow night when Shabbos is over. Sunday through Wednesday, 3 in the afternoon until 8 in the evening at Sharei Tefillah Congregation in the Weiner Gallery, with Mincha and Mariv a little bit before 6 o'clock each evening. Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma dibrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. He who grants peace in the heavens, may he grant peace to us. Amen. The tradition as we leave the cemetery, I know the family is going to stay for a little while as the rest of the grave is filled in, but that will take some time. In the meantime, as we depart, as we say goodbye to the family, we form an aisle, 2 lines to allow the family to walk down that aisle, and we say to them the traditional words of comfort, Hamakom yenachem etchem b'toch sha'ar v'lei Tzion Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. So those who aren't family, which might not be immediate family, non-immediate family should form one side where I'm standing, another side there where Alex is, but yeah, Alex, actually you can be in the aisle because you're not an immediate mourner. So we form an aisle to allow the family to walk by.
You are. Just walk carefully, okay?
Shamayim v'aretz Ezri Meim Adonai Oseh Shamayim v'aretz. I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from where does my help come? I lift up my eyes unto the mountains, from where does my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. My help comes from God, maker of heaven and